right, thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. It's great to be here in front of so many people, in front of my friends JP and Keith right here, and welcome into everybody here this evening. We are without one member of our panel today, and that is Shep Messing. He was unable to be here, so we wish him well, and we will catch up with him on down the road. Well, let's introduce our great panel. We're here to kind of celebrate a Back to the Future, where we're talking about the past, the present, and the future of the highest level of professional indoor soccer in the world. That is the Major Arena Soccer League. With that, I'd like to introduce our first member. He grew up in upstate New York, and after graduating from always mess up the name of this university, Oneonta State, with school records for most points. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Kids, which made him the first overall pick in the 1978 Major Indoor Soccer League draft. His MISL career made stops in Columbus, Hartford, and then in 1984, he left the MISL for a rival league where he coached and played for the Louisville Thunder of the AISA, where he would lead the Thunder to 3 final appearances and winning the title in the late 80s. In June of last year, he was named commissioner of the Major Arena Soccer League, and since 1984, he has become one of the most successful coaches in United States soccer history and the winningest coach in North American soccer history, with over 700 wins, 6 league championships, and 8 Coach of the Year awards to help prove the point. He's good. A fierce competitor with a booming voice, he built the Milwaukee Wave into a premier franchise in the Major Arena Soccer League. Also, a U.S. national futsal team coach for many years, and in 1989, the U.S. futsal national team brought home the bronze medal in the World Cup. So with that, we'd like to welcome in the commissioner of the MASL, Mr. Keith Tozer. Keith, great to have you here. Our other panelist also is regarded as the original voice of U.S. soccer, with a broadcasting career that has spanned 30 years. A pioneer who recently became the Major Arena Soccer League's president of communications and media. He currently serves as Fox Sports' lead play-by-play voice for its premier soccer portfolio, including FIFA World Cups, the U.S. women's national team, and since 2010, he has been the voice of Major League Soccer's Philadelphia Union. He has called 15 World Cups, 9 by the men, 6 by the women, and he holds the distinction of having called games on all of the television networks: NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, ESPN, and the list goes on and on and on. He's a versatile announcer as well, who has called games for the NHL network. He's covered the NBA and college hoops for ESPN and has been the television voice of the University of Kansas and Creighton University, in addition to calling games for the Atlantic 10 as well as the Missouri Valley Conference. All those games, all that history, all that travel. Ladies and gentlemen, another legend, Mr. J.P. Dellacamera. Welcome in, J.P.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, since we're talking about the past, the present, and the future, let's start at the beginning. And I'm going to start here with a trivia question for all of you out there. Let's see here. This came from my broadcast partner, Eric Bergrud here. Let's start with this here. What do Pete Rose, Keith Tozer, and Shep Messing all have in common? Anybody?
Am I allowed?
Anybody?
Am I allowed to guess?
Yeah, your guess, of course.
Go with Tommy. Go with Tommy.
All right, go ahead, Tommy. You are correct. You are correct, Tommy. They were all on the turf at Major Indoor Soccer League's inaugural game. Keith and Shep were on opposing teams, and Keith and Shep, just talk about your recollections of that first game ever back in 1979. What was that like?
Well, I was getting ready to be drafted in the NASL, and in November, Keith Von Aaron, who went to Harvard College across the street, called me up and said, "Hey, by the way, you just got drafted into the Major Indoor Soccer League." I was like, "What is that?" And then a couple days later, Pete Rose's agent called me, and next thing you know, I was in Cincinnati, and I went from broke to having a few bucks in my pocket. And then 3 weeks later, Nassau Coliseum with Pete in the locker room. Shep was a guy that we always went to the Cosmos games to look at, and I saw him on the other end of the field, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got Pete in the locker room, I got Shep on the other end. It was an amazing day, a day I'll never forget.
What was the scope of, or the landscape like of professional indoor soccer in the United States in that day when you played that game? What was it like?
There was no indoor soccer. Ed Tepper got together and with another friend, Earl Foreman, who were Philadelphia Flyer season ticket holders. And they said, oh my gosh, we love hockey, but hey, what do you think about putting this thing together with soccer, you know? And it was born because at that time, and I know there's like Tony Glavin here from St. Louis and Tommy who played indoor. There was no indoor centers across the country at that time, zero. Next thing you know, it was almost like an upside down mortgage where you have a professional league with no grassroots. Then grassroots became, and then there was 2,500 to 5,000 indoor centers across the country, and the game just blew up.
Wow. So what was training like? How did you train? If there were no indoor centers, what did that look like?
Well, my training facility in Cincinnati was a war memorial cement floor, probably the size of this room, with like pillars like that. So if someone didn't like you as you're running down the flank, someone would check you into a pillar. So the cement was kind of like a soft cement, but it was really hard to fall on.
No such thing as soft cement.
There is no soft cement. Yeah. So it was kind of like wild. And like I said, from the day that Keith called me to the day we started playing was just wonderful. Joe Macknick and Gino DiPolito got involved. They came up with the rules with Shep. And next thing you know, the indoor game was off and running.
What was your instruction like in those days? It's, you know, I think some people believe that the indoor game is, shall we say, somewhat foreign to the outdoor game. I've always been told that soccer is soccer, wherever you play it. But what was the instruction like in those days when you transitioned from outdoor to indoor?
Well, the first instruction was Ed and Earl went to Joe Macknick, who got in touch with Walt Chesowitz, who was the head coach of the Olympic team, and said, by the way, we got this crazy game we'd like to test with. Can you take all your players from your Olympic pool and draft them into the MISL? So my team had Doc Lawson, had Ty Keogh, who was player of the year. The list goes on, who got kind of dispersed. So you just had a lot of good outdoor players trying to figure out what indoor, and then obviously Don Popovic, the coach of the Arrows, went out and got Steve Zungel, who turned into be, the Lord of all indoor. Freddie Kagura was working on a dock in the middle of Brooklyn, and someone found him, and then he went there, and then you had Luis Alberto and Dave DeRico was with the national team. So guys started putting teams together. They're just very good soccer players to adapt to the indoor game, and it worked.
So in the early beginning of the indoor game, attendance was modest, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 in the first couple of years, but the game really began to grow and it really began to take root, and it spread like wildfire across the country with franchises popping up and television deals with all of the major networks, including ESPN. And JP, that's where you come in. Give us an idea about where you were in your broadcasting career. Did you cut your teeth on the major indoor soccer league? And how did you get involved in the league?
No, I was a baby when Keith was playing. No, I was doing minor league hockey for years. And back then, the NHL was, I can't remember how many teams, but it was less than half the size of it was now. So it was hard to get to the National Hockey League. And there were so many good broadcasters that I grew up with, including like the Doc Emmerichs of the world that became, national stars. So after 10 years, riding buses in the minors and being in small markets, I thought I liked soccer, heard about the indoor soccer, watched some of it, and I thought, this could be my step. To me, indoor soccer was like hockey on grass. So Pittsburgh Spirit, where Keith was playing, knew that I was close by, 2 hours away, Erie, Pennsylvania, working with a minor league hockey team. And they got in touch with me and asked me if I would do an audition tape. And when I went to do the tape, it's difficult to not fall in love, with the indoor game. I was hooked. I was hooked when I watched it on TV. Again, I was not there for the original part of it, but I started in, I want to say it was 82. When did you guys start? 78? 78. So I think 80, trying to remember, it was 80. I'm thinking it was 82 was my first year. And we had some really good teams in Pittsburgh, and I was fortunate enough to go from a minor league hockey situation to a point where now I'm flying instead of being on the buses. I'm broadcasting in a major market, Pittsburgh, major television station, KDKA. And so that's where it all started for me, and that's where I really cut my teeth that led to all of these other outdoor games. and the rest is history. But back then, unlike today, we were the only game in town on television. The game of the week was indoor soccer. There was no outdoor soccer, no Premier League on TV, no MLS. Now you can watch any league in the world, literally, on your smartphone, iPad, television, whatever you want.
What was the reaction by fans in the games that you called?
They were into it. They were into it. I think some of our fans. Some of the fans fell in love with the game, but some of them fell in love with the players, I would say. Keith was one of the better ones that I was around in terms of dealing with the public. We did so many clinics in Pittsburgh within probably like a 2-hour radius, and our guys, there was not an autograph to be signed that they would refuse. And if the clinic was supposed to end in an hour, guys like Keith would stay for an hour and a half, whatever it took. So I think there was an identity that was built in from players to fans and vice versa, and I think they all fed off of that.
Let's go back to the landscape of what soccer was like back then in the original MISL. There was a time when you were competing with the NASL as well, and this question comes from my broadcast partner, Eric. This was in the early 80s when the major indoor soccer league competed with the North American Soccer League for attention, and in some cases, players, right, going back and forth from the leagues, right, including our Shep Messing, chairman of the MASL. So what lessons do you think that the league learned from the NASL days as far as the soccer environment? Keith?
Well, I think, first of all, there was a little battle between the NASL and the MISL. Werner Roth is sitting right here, who played for the New York Cosmos, and it was like, are we going to get together? Are we going to go our separate ways? Are we going to fight over players? We're going to fight over for coaches. And obviously the NASL stopped in indoor, and the MISL then became even bigger. And I think the big lesson is how do you all work together to promote the game together? And that's one of the reasons why JP, Shep, and I got together, is that we love the indoor game. It's got a rich history. It's got a great present and a bright future. And I feel that with us working together, and I believe this is the first time that indoor soccer, other than a game, has really been in a symposium and being part of it. We do have a game on Saturday night, and Bud Basinski is the owner of the team, and it's going to be at the T-Mobile building. I think us getting together and saying, look, we're part of the soccer landscape, we just happen to be indoor, I think it's something we learned a lot about.
Yeah. JP?
I was thinking back, NASL saw how successful MISL was, and they wanted to carve their own niche. And I think what ended up happening was teams like Chicago, when they were the Sting, and San Diego, saw that really the MISL was the better. And I think it ended up hurting the NASL because now instead of devoting all their attention to outdoor, they were paying half of their attention to indoor, whereas MISL was completely indoor, and we were drawing the crowds. So I think part of our success is what drove them out of the indoor business and then eventually out of the outdoor business.
Did players think that one league was better than the other? Did players want to go to the outdoor game? Did they want this idea of maybe playing in both leagues? Was that something that was available to players back then?
I think a couple guys played outdoors for one. Like didn't Jungle play
Jungle
outdoors?
played in the NASL and then it went indoor. I think we were all happy because we had the ability to make money playing the game that we love. So if you played in the NASL, it was great. If you played in MISL, it was great, but we were playing. So, and then as JP said, the NASL decided, hey, we better stick to the outdoor game. And then Jerry Buss got involved and the DeBartolo got involved. And then all of a sudden the game started growing and growing and growing.
Of course, it was the players that made the league. What about Jungle? What was he like to play against? What kind of person was he?
You know, there's been so many wonderful players to play this great indoor game. You know, you had Preki, who was great with his left foot. He wasn't a great dribbler, but he could find people, okay? Then you had Goosens, who could post up. And you had Kim Rudfan, who hit the ball from the back. Hector was a shooter. Rasmussen was a dribbler. Zungel could do all that. Zungel could be at the back post like Paul Child always was. He could dribble people. He could shoot from anywhere with both feet. I mean, he had the full package, and that's why he scored so many goals.
Why do you think we don't hear from him these days very much anymore?
I don't know. Do you know where he is?
Is he still in California?
I have no idea. He kind of disappeared, right? Like, yeah, he kind of disappeared.
I think only Steve can answer that question.
Yeah. But he was just trying to compare him to somebody, like anybody that followed the NHL, Gretzky was the guy, back then. Jungle could do anything, whether it was score 5 goals in a game or more. He could do it all. And I've never seen a player like him who, I know sometimes there's an impression that soccer players fake injuries, but that's an impression, right? That's fake. We don't. But I would see him limping, and you would be thinking as a broadcaster, he's hurt. And then the ball would roll free, and he smelled it. He's going off on a line change. He sees the ball, and he takes off. Like, his recovery was amazing. All he wanted to do, really, was score goals, and there was nobody better than him at that.
And I think there's only been 2 or 3 games where he didn't score any goals, which is pretty amazing. One game comes to my mind is that it was at like 95 goals, and no one scored 100 goals in a season. And we're playing in Madison Square Garden. So from a kid who grew up in New York, the only way I was going to play in the Garden was a hockey player, and I wasn't, or be in the zoo, which I'm glad I wasn't. And all of a sudden we're playing in Madison Square Garden, and Paul Toomey and myself and a bunch of guys, our responsibility was to mark Steve. And our coach, John, at the time, Kowalski, said, hey, guys, we just don't want Steve to score 100 in the Garden. Well, he got 96, and then he got 97, and he got 98, 99, and 100. But in the Garden, it was magical. It was great times back then.
Wow.
Nick, when you think about like outdoor soccer, right? The field is bigger, and we all know who the stars are. And I'm not saying it's easy to mark a guy. It's definitely not, right? But indoor, everybody knew, try to stop him, right? But they couldn't. Preki, you knew he was going to cut. You knew he was going to go on his left foot. Couldn't stop him. These guys were amazing in the tight spaces, right? And you mentioned names that I forgot about, like Goossens and Eric Rasmussen and Rundfed. But I mean, we had Jungle, we had Stan Terlecki, we had Branko Segota, we had Tattoo. So many names.
Tony
right?
Glavin.
Yes. Sorry, Tony, because Tony was on my team in St. Louis. Nivo Bandovich, who played later. Chico Borja, late Chico Borja, Stamenkovic we mentioned. So many great players who could do it all. And you could talk about them in a pregame, try to mark them out of the game, but it was easier said than done. You would think it would be easier because there's not much space, right? Less players on the field, but it wasn't.
It's another great thing about all those players that we're mentioning, hundreds of players we haven't, they're all ingrained into the soccer environment in this country. I mean, you can look at here in KC, Zoran Savic's been an assistant coach here for how many years? Fernando Clavillo, who passed away, obviously with FC Dallas. And that list goes on. And going to the college ranks, you got Mike Noonan, who played for the Louisville Thunder, just won the national championship at Clemson University. And those stories go on and on, how important the players, the coaching, the staff of people in indoor then went into the outdoor game.
Yeah, I think it's often forgotten that the history of the indoor game, here in Kansas City, we're celebrating 40 years of professional indoor soccer here, and we have a loyal following and very intelligent fans that know about the history of the original MISL. In fact, we in Kansas City are fortunate enough to have a professor on staff who we can lean on, who knows so much about the great history. And often what we talk about on our broadcasts is about legacy players who their fathers have played in the league, who are now playing in the indoor game, which is just, it's just bonkers when you think about it. But it's really something to be proud of, and it's something where the indoor game has really made its mark on the soccer community in the United States.
Yeah, look at Brian Smetzer. Started in indoor, been coach of the year, won championships in the MLS. We already talked about Mike and all the other coaches. And again, Preki, I think, please don't Google this, he was maybe the only back-to-back MVP in Major League Soccer who played for 10 or 12 years in indoor soccer. And again, there's so many of those stories. And now, back to the future, there's going to be so many great players and coaches now that are going to continue on.
Well, maybe that's a good point to kind of transition to where we are currently in the MASL. We've got teams from coast to coast. We have a team in Mexico. Keith, you're the commissioner here. Why don't you give us an update on where we are right now and in terms of as a league right now?
Well, we were all three of us excited about coming back in an indoor, and the first thing we wanted to do was solidify the memberships that we have. That was the most important thing. We didn't want to back down if we couldn't. We didn't want to take any new teams on. We wanted to say, let's get the teams we have. We have 12 teams that are currently playing right now. Chihuahua actually will play their first home game tomorrow night. The Mexican market is extremely important for us. Monterrey sat out this year because of COVID there. Obviously, we have Kansas City in the Central Division. We have the East Coast Division, Baltimore Blast, which everybody remembers since almost day one. And then you have the West Coast with the San Diego Sockers. So we have some really great teams playing right now, and we'll be adding teams in the future.
A question for both of you, and that is, it's kind of back to the players again. From my broadcast partner, Eric here, how do you think the players on the field have changed from the game that we saw in the 80s and early 90s to what the game is now today in 2022? Is there a comparison that you can make between the two players?
The players that
Two
we
eras.
have, the players we have nowadays are fantastic players. In the transformation and progression of any sports league or any sport, coaches become smarter and adapt more tactics. Before, Zungel, he didn't come back behind the midfield line too much. He stayed up top. But now there's terminology getting 5 back behind the line of the ball. So that has changed the game a lot. If you ask me the difference between the players now and the players back then, the physicality now is wonderful. You know, like in the NBA back then, 6'5" was big, right? 6'11", 7 foot now, and they move like they're 6'2". The players like Frank Tahu for Ontario, Frank is an absolutely wonderful player, and he's 6'4", 6'5". Ian Bennett is a wonderful player, small, quick, great dribbler, great finisher. Leo Gibson, who is an amazing player. He played for me on the national team. Here's a player coach who has done unbelievable, putting tactics together, bringing players here, and he's another player who could do it all. The present player now, I think, on the most part, would have no issue playing with the players of the past. Just different tactics.
Interesting. What are your observations, JP?
I think that anybody that's watched this league or was a part of this league, let's say the last 5 years, knows how good this league was in terms of the players. People like myself that only got to watch, you know, maybe a handful of games before I came in with Keith and Shep, you know, would watch some games, but I didn't really watch enough games to be able to make that assessment. The biggest thing that I've seen in watching our games this year, and I pretty much watched them all, not live, but you know, next day or some the same day, the talent level is really good. It's really good. I think the difference in the players of today and the players from years ago is that I think our guys basically are probably younger, you know, or at least our star players, with the exception of Bennett and Gibson, who I know are late 30s but still playing very well. But I think our guys are a little bit younger and lesser known, and part of our job is to give them, you know, more exposure so that people can see how good they really are. But one of the reasons why the MISL was so successful back then, got to remember the timing too, right? There was no outdoor league. All of sports was different. It was much smaller, right? There were no video games. There was no internet, for God's sake, right? So different times, right? So if you have a player now, like a Steve Zungel, like a Stan Terlecki, like a Tattoo, like name the top 10 guys you can think of, if they're coming to this country now, they're playing in MLS because that's really where the money is. That's just the way it goes, right? But that doesn't mean we can't get star players. I think we have a lot of star players in this league. So I think that for those that have not watched our league play, I think you'd be very surprised at how good these players are.
Eric and I, when you talk on the broadcast, you know, we talk about, you know, where people are going to watch games and stuff like that, and you know, there's no other pub that's right across the street where a lot of people are going to watch the English Premier League, or they're going to watch an MLS game, something like that. How do you think the league can demonstrate? How do you think we can attract those fans who are watching those particular things and bring them into our game and create some interest in the indoor game?
That's one reason why we came here. Indoor soccer has never really been a part of this coaches convention. we felt when we got together that we needed to get back into the conversation of the soccer group in our country. And that could be outdoor soccer, it could be futsal, it could be indoor soccer. And one of the first things we said is that we had to come here. And from Jeff, who's the new CEO, to Rudy, to everybody involved with United Soccer Coaches, they embraced the indoor game. They said, we would love to have you guys here. So this was an extremely important aspect of us coming into the league. Then the Kansas City Comets ownership group, they said, we want to play a game. So Bud and Chad, all his players, the fans, to have the game at the convention, at the T-Mobile building right across the street Saturday night, I think it's just going to be another thing. Did we expect this room to be full today? No. Do we expect this room to be full in the future? We certainly do. So if you haven't gotten your tickets for the game Saturday night, please come out.
Yeah, Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Tickets are inexpensive. And if you got a group of 10 or more, you can get a really inexpensive seat. I'm looking at out there in the crowd, and I've seen a lot of familiar faces. A lot of former players are here. John Perry, Sean Bowers. These are guys who have played the indoor game, who are now teaching or coaching soccer, and that's where a lot of coaches are here. And I'm just curious about get your guys' take about players who have played back in the day, who are now sharing their experience with players, giving them their tips and ideas about what it is like to play in the indoor game, how to play the indoor game, how to use the boards, all those types of things, and how that will help grow the game.
You're the coach, but I would say this: when we started MISL, I can tell you for a fact where the coaching knowledge came from, and it was from the NHL. Because anytime there was a team in the same city as an NHL franchise, like in New York, for example, Don Popovic would talk to whoever was coaching the Islanders at that time. You know, in Pittsburgh, it was the same thing because the power play is the same, the penalty kill is the same.
That's interesting.
You know, breaking out of your zone is the same. Now they probably don't even talk to coaches, right? Because the game is developed and everybody knows, you know, what they're doing. Now you talk to other soccer coaches, I would think, right? But back then, it was more hockey, I would say.
Yeah, all the guys are in this room. You can go to Tommy Tanner back there with Utica. He lives in Syracuse. You have Tommy Mulroy, who did the Copa Latino in Miami. You got Charlie Morgan in Georgia. You got Tony in St. Louis. If you look around this room, all these guys who are men of character wanted to give something back to their community. And if you look and if you go to any outdoor tournament in the country and you see so many people winning these, you'll go, oh my gosh, I know him, he was indoor. Oh my gosh, I know he was indoor. These guys were learners. They had a passion for the game, no matter what it was, outdoor, indoor, or futsal. And I think they wanted to give something back to the community. I think that was really the key thing about the people that were involved in the MISL, is they really, even the foreign players came over.
Oh, yeah.
They came over here and they wanted to get ingrained in the community. Look at Kim. Kim came from Holland, and he was in Wichita and a big star, came to Kansas City, and he's still giving back. Those are all great stories, and we'll continue to do that because the players that are playing today are all involved in some form of the youth game, be it indoor or outdoor.
By the way, we invite you guys again to Saturday night. We're going to have the game between the Tacoma Stars and the Kansas City Comets. That's at 7 o'clock. KCComets.com. If you're looking for tickets, just click on the banner that says T-Mobile, and it'll take you right to the place where you can purchase some tickets for Saturday night. Also, I'd like to invite everybody that's in this room to a little meet and greet that we're going to have on Friday night across the street from T-Mobile Center at Johnny's. That'll be between 5 and 8 o'clock, and there's going to be players past and present that'll be there for a little meet and greet. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to make it, but I plan on being there and hope you guys can make it too. So, what else? Should we talk about the future?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the future.
Sure.
Okay.
And let's talk about where you want the game to go. What is your vision of the game, Commissioner Tozer?
Well, do you want to let the cat out of the bag?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can I?
Go ahead. Are you talking about the same thing?
The draft?
Yeah.
You want to tee it up?
No, go ahead. You're the commissioner.
Well, again, when we say the office of the commissioner, it doesn't mean me. It means JP, myself, and Shep. We always get together, and like the Supreme Court with 9, we have 3. So every time we vote on something, okay, we talk to each other. move one person one way, move one person the other, but at the end of the day, we all go forward together. One thing that we wanted to bring back, and JP is the head of that committee, is that we really felt that the players in college are extremely important to the future of the game. The college draft back when, and actually we had a college showcase here in Kansas City. Their first one was the Budweiser Fest. I think some of you guys remember that in Cleveland. So many great young players came out of college to be stars of indoor and then go outdoor. I was around a pool in Kansas City, and a coach came, in Atlanta, and some coach came up to me and he goes, hey, you have to look at this young man out of Erskine College. You should draft him. And I said, what's his name? They said, Brian Haynes. So I did some research. We didn't have internet back then. I drafted him. Brian started for the Atlanta Attack and then went to Major League Soccer, and he was a fabulous player. So we will be announcing.
As we speak, you guys are the first ones to hear it. So this is like a scoop, right?
So we're going to be having the college draft sometime next fall, maybe before Christmas. We'll have territorial picks. We'll have other rounds. But we all felt, and that includes our owners and our coaches, that we need to get involved in getting the college player back. Now, there might be not the top players that might go to Major League Soccer. That's okay. Mm-hmm. There are so many wonderful players that have come to this country to go to college, or that have grown up here, should be playing this great game of indoor. And we're looking for them.
Division I, Division II, NAIA, doesn't matter, but we think the college player is important to our future. We're going to have 5 rounds. First 2 will be territorial, and it will be an annual draft, and our first one will be sometime at the end of the college season.
You know, we're sort of territorial in terms of the Kansas City Comets around this area. We have a really good relationship with many of the NAIA schools, including Park University, which my partner is as a chief communication strategist. It's worked well for the Comets. Working with local universities, NAIA teams. Our team primarily is made up of players who have gone to college regionally, and also made up of players who grew up playing soccer in the Kansas City area. And I think 2 things. One, it keeps players in an area that they're familiar with. Number 2, it also keeps fans interested knowing that the players that they see there on the field are from this area and want to be in this community, off the field as well. So I think bringing back the college draft is really a great idea for this league.
If you remember, I was coaching the Atlanta Attack, and we moved the team to Kansas City. Mm-hmm. So we played at the Kemper Arena, and obviously you have wonderful colleges here in Missouri and Kansas City. And I drafted a young man named John Perry, who's sitting back there. And John was, I believe, my #1 draft pick. And I remember the first week, Zoran Savic, Bobby Joe Esposito, Brian Haynes, Jimmy Schwab, the list goes on. And they came to me and said, hey, by the way, Coach, can you tell him to pass the ball backwards? And I'm like, no, I want him to go forward because he's a great attacker. And if you want to get the ball from John, get to the second post. But you had so many players from this area, Johnny Sosa, who came here, Brian Perez, so many great players. And that's what we want to do. But again, the message has to go out. We think a lot of college players over the last 10 or 15 years maybe haven't thought about indoor soccer. But now they're going to think about indoor soccer, that there is another pathway for them to go.
JP, how can we engage soccer fans who may be MLS fans, who may be English Premier fans? Is there a way that we can reach out and engage fans to have them give the indoor game a chance?
I think we're trying to do that more with social media and some of the recent hirings that we've had. I think I'm more old school, so while I don't do social media myself, I recognize the importance of it. I recognize the value of it, and we have someone amongst our office staff that takes care of that. And our numbers show that we're making gains, we're making inroads in various areas, whether it's followers on Twitter, Instagram, how many people are watching our streams. But I think it's all like baby steps, right? You're never going to go from whatever it is. Like if you have 1 million followers on Twitter, unless you say something outrageous, you're not going to jump to 10 million, in a couple of days, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all gradual. So I think step by step, 1 step at a time, convert them. Hopefully not 1 at a time, like 10 at a time or 20 at a time or something like that, But I think the more people that get to see us will get to like us. You know, I don't think you can watch the game and walk away from it and say, it's not for me. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a great sport.
Yeah, you know, Nick, indoor soccer is a wonderful sport on its own, obviously. I also think it's a great teacher. Yeah, and you know my passion is teaching. If you talk to a lot of guys who came from indoor that are coaching outdoor, they all tell everybody, you know what, I wish my player would go play indoor for 6 months because he would learn to be a better defender. He would learn to be better with the ball. He would think quicker. And that's another message why we're here, is that indoor soccer is a fabulous game on its own, but it also can be a great teacher, kind of like futsal has done a nice job of saying it's a great developer. But then, you know, you got Ryan Sigich somewhere in the room. He's the head of referees who's done a great job. We think if young people get involved in indoor soccer in St. Louis, in Wichita, in Kansas City, in Milwaukee, and all the cities as young referees, it's a difficult game to referee because you have to think ahead quicker, a lot more action. When you go back outdoor, they'll be a better referee. So we're trying to make sure that whole package, that whole message is told why we're here.
Yeah, and helping us with exposure, I think, is the fact that, you know, on a daily basis, and mostly that's Shep, you know, talking to corporate sponsors. We'll be announcing more sponsors in the very near future. Some of these deals, unfortunately, take longer than we would like, but they end up getting done. So there'll be more corporate sponsorship. We've already added a couple of people now. We're going to add more. You know, we're trying to strike a television deal as well in the near future. And we're talking, just so you know, we're talking currently with people who own NHL teams, who own NBA teams, who have interest in Premier League teams. So we're going after people that not just have deep pockets, they have deep connections. You know, they know how to get things done. And I think if we can get one NHL owner, we'll get two. You know, if we can get one NBA guy, we can get two. And the more you bring those guys in with the current group that we have now, they'll make us that much stronger, right? We can learn from other leagues, right? And who's to say we can't get some of these NHL or NBA teams in? I'm surprised, you know, we haven't in the past, but I think with the current leadership, it's all about relationships, right? Like, I can't tell you how many people, Keith, Shep, myself, have spoken to that their door is open only because we know them. Not because we're selling indoor soccer, but they know who we are personally. And I think with the people that we have, besides Keith, Shep, and myself, some other people that are in the background, they have doors open to some of these key people. And like I said, I think if you get one in, you get a couple more.
You know, it was like the first 30 days was crazy after we came back to indoor. You know, we had the podcast and the Zoom to raise money during COVID, and we brought a lot of the guys from the past into that. But when we were announced, I mean, so many people, nationally and internationally, started calling us that we maybe hadn't talked in a while, that are in very high places to say, hey, by the way, how much is a franchise? What do I need? Is this market open? How can I be a sponsor? The first 30 days was a fast treadmill, and it's been a fast treadmill ever since then.
What would that, in a practical sense, if you got somebody on board, an NHL owner, what would that look like for the league?
Well, it depends on who it is, right? If it's a name that everybody knows, or some owners, because ownerships have changed, there's some that I don't know. Before I would know probably who owned these teams. So it probably would depend on who that person is and how successful their club is. But I think that I'm sure our ownership group would welcome anybody from the NHL or NBA because of the connections and the potential, right? It's not just bringing in one of these people today. It's what the future, what else they can bring in. You know, they might have more network connections. They will have more network connections than we do as well, and we can use them to help the league grow.
It's kind of like the domino theory, right?
Yeah.
Owners of sports teams, they always like to look at who the owners are in the league and go, oh my God, I want to be with him. I want to be with her. You know, we have Shelley Clark, who's up in St. Louis, who one of the first women professional owners in indoor soccer or soccer, who has done an awesome job. But they look at the list and they say, oh, hey, I want to go. And why does someone want to be in professional sports? They might want to go into politics. It helps them. They might want to have their core businesses get pushed out. They might want to have kids they want to give it to. And what a great sport to do this. at maybe a little bit cheaper than an EPL team. So we're excited.
And I think they want to get in now on the ground floor because they've heard that expansion fee is going to cost more money starting next year. So I think they see where we're trying to go, with sponsors. And, if you're a business guy and the price is here today, it's better to go in here than go in there.
Right. The average arena size right now is somewhere between 5 and say 7,000 for an arena franchise. If you get an NHL owner in here. The model right now is to keep it around 5 to 8,000, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't that fits with what the league is right now?
Right, but I think if you have an NHL or an NBA guy and he owns his own building, he's going to make that work, right?
Yep.
He's already got the staff in place. Maybe he doesn't. If it's a 20,000 seat arena, obviously we don't want that. But maybe he curtains off the top. We're not going to tell them how to run it if they're running an NHL or an NBA team. But that's the ideal size. And if we can get into situations, I don't know how far down the road this is, but I remember, with MLS has made so many great steps over the years. And one of the greatest things that they've done was build their own stadiums, build their own training facilities. That's what gets players. Players get excited. Besides the money, players get excited when they see where they're playing their games and where they're training, right? And so I know San Diego is, 2 years away, I think? They're building their own facility. We need to, at some point, but I don't know when that is, not be the second or third tenant in a building, but be a primary tenant. And so if we can get to a point where we're doing, 6,000 people a game, it's worth it for somebody to build a 7,000 or an 8,000 seat building, or for the city to want to do it for us. So I think I just don't know when that is, but that was definitely one of the reasons for Major League Soccer's success. They call it soccer-specific stadiums, and it's more than that now because they do other events, but their own stadiums and their own training facilities.
How about the game on the field? Do you foresee any changes with the rules? You implemented a goalkeeper rule this year to some controversy with the fans.
That was Keith's rule.
No.
I think it's good, though.
I just do it. The whole idea behind the goalkeeper rule is to keep the game pushing forward. All right. I've heard you, Keith, talk about too many times the players are passing the ball back to the goalkeeper. They're keeping it in in their defensive third too much. The game's not going forward enough. So you implemented this goalkeeper rule. For those who don't know, explain the rule and how do you think it's gone so far?
Well, everybody thought we just came into the office and threw out a rule, then make it change. But we did our due diligence. So the first thing we did is we had Ryan, as I said, the head of referees, took 3 games from the year before COVID, and we did stats. How many times the ball was passed backward to a goalkeeper during a game. And we found out the average was between 75 and 100 times the ball went through the goalkeeper. So then after we did that, then we went to an M2, M3, because we do have 3 tiers in our system, and we had a combine then do that rule. In the first 15 minutes of that combine, the players were told just to play. The notes to them were taking stats. Again, in only 30 minutes, the ball went back somewhere between 75 and 100 times. So the coach said, hey, by the way, I'm looking for players who want to go forward. And the Zungles and the Prekis and whoever, go score goals. So they said, okay, here's the new law. The law would be for that session that if the goalkeeper releases the ball with their feet, they can't get the ball back until the ball goes out of bounds, touched by an opponent, or out of play, which means a foul or a restart. So the score in the first 15 minutes was 1-1. The score in the next 30 minutes was 6-6. So we saw that goal scoring went up. Then that staff asked questions to some of the players. Hey, what did you think? And one of the players, if not many of them, said, oh my gosh, I had to start thinking about what I was going to do with the ball before I got it. Well, we know that's what we all should do. The only players that had a little angst to it was, who do you think?
The goalkeepers.
The goalkeepers. They said, I'm a playmaker. The ball should come through me. So after doing our due diligence and talking to a lot of people that have been involved in the game, then we made the decision. Then the problem started. Some people said, well, okay, you're going to have a problem with injuries. And we said, why? And they said, well, we won't be able to substitute. And we said, why? And they said, well, you have to pass the ball back and forth between the goalkeeper and the defender to substitute. And then we said, I've never heard of that, okay? 2 defenders stay, a midfielder stays, you exchange. So that was a fallacy. And then they said that maybe we weren't ready for it. I think we have awesome American players in this country. So many players that haven't been identified yet that we're going to identify. You know, Christian Pulisic, by the way. You heard of the guy, right? He plays in Chelsea. His dad played for the Harrisburg, Hershey. Harrisburg. And then when Mark decided to go coach for Detroit, Christian went with him, started playing indoor and futsal, and next thing you know, he's making a ton of money over there. So why? He's an attacking player. So this new goalkeeper rule, I think, is going to create better players in the future and a better game, which is sell it better for our fans, sponsors, and new ownership groups. So right now, the last part, they said that the referees wouldn't be able to do it. I think we've had 7 times that the call has been made in 40 games. So it's been successful so far. Good job, JP.
No, that was yours. That was yours. I think, you know, I think the league, the sport, is great. So I don't see, unless you have another idea, I don't see major rule changes, you know, being made. I think the game is great. I think that was a good, it was a change, but more like a tweak, you know, more than anything else, and that's worked. But it's not like we're sitting there thinking, well, what can we change next? The game is great, you know, just the way it is. So.
I mean, you're not going to bring back the 3-point line or anything like that.
No.
Or 1-point shootouts or anything like that.
More than 1 point for a goal or some crazy stuff like that. No, we're not going to do that. But like, we'll tweak that. We tweak the standings now so you can get, you know, 3 points, 2 or 1. You know, little things like that, just to try to make it more like other American sports, easier to follow. Like the old standings was, you'd be checking out somebody's 6.5 games behind, and people don't know really what that means. You know, we're used to points. I can see how many points. I can see how many games played. Figure it out. Make it easier.
You know, whenever we want to stir up the audience and we want to, you know, create some controversy on the broadcast, all we got to do is go back and talk about the differences between goalkeepers in the original MISL days and compare them to goalkeepers today in the league. And one of the things that we often say is that, you know, goalkeepers today are very, very skillful with their feet. I mean, they really know how to play with the ball at their feet. And, you know, some people would say, oh, phooey, Nick and Eric, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Players in the original MISL could do that as well. But with a nod to the goalkeepers, who we heard some complaining about that new rule, the players of today, like our guy Neto in Kansas City, like Josh Lemos, who plays in Milwaukee, he's not playing this year. Tapalo, who plays in St. Louis, who is out this year. Those 3 examples are players who really can play with the ball at their feet. Any sense that you might be taking that away from them?
No, to the contrary. We've helped them. Because the old rule was the goalkeeper could not go forward into the fourth quarter, fourth period. People would say, how come your keeper can't go forward? I go, I don't know. That's the rule that was in the past. If they want to go forward, they can go forward at the beginning of the game. So if they make a save with their hands and they release the ball to a teammate, that save is not counted as their first possession. They can get it back. So there was those comments that you were talking about, you're taking it away. I'm watching Tacoma in my house, and Danny Waltman in the first 6 minutes of the game makes a save, puts the ball down in front of him, takes off down the entire field, plays the ball off the boards around a defender, and almost scores. And I'm saying, oh my God, I hope this announcer is going to say, look what this new rule has done, but they didn't say anything. So again, as we said earlier on in the symposium, is that the games change as you go and coaches become smarter and tactics change. You're going to see more goalkeepers now figure it out where they make a save, and instead of counting on their own and waiting for players to drop back and get organized defensively, why not just take the ball and put it down and attack and create numerical advantages. You will see, as this journey goes, more goalkeepers figuring out. One of the best right now is Neto here. You know who he reminds me of?
Who?
Victor Nogueira.
Wow.
And Victor Nogueira was wonderful with his feet, but Victor didn't want to pass to and back and back. But Victor wanted to get it and go that way.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
I was going to say, Nogueira might have been one of those guys pissed at the new rule because he wanted to touch the ball as often as he could. Slobo Ilievsky, the late Slobo Ilievsky, same thing. Like, he might have been upset with it, but he would go forward. Like you said about Waldman, Slobo, that was part of the excitement of the game. Slobo would go and, you know, probably Tony, when you were coaching, yeah, I know, I see you pounding your chest right now. Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing Slobo like past the halfway line, and as a broadcaster, I'm looking and I see an empty net, and I'm thinking, Jesus, if he loses the ball here, it's, you know, it's game over. But those guys were so confident with the ball, and when you just played fun games, they didn't want to play goal. They wanted to play in the field.
I was honored to coach Victor as long as he did, because he was a fabulous goalkeeper, as you know, amongst many fabulous goalkeepers. But even when I was coaching 15 years ago, if not more, with Victor, I really felt at that time the goalkeeper rule should have been changed, because Victor always wanted the ball and then go forward. And I'm like, you know, Brian Haynes wants the ball. Zoran Savic wants the ball. Ian Bennett wants the ball. Giuliano wants the ball. So even back then, but when I brought it up back then, everybody thought I had like a sidebar, like, oh, he's trying to do something. So this has been thought for a long period of time, and we feel it's been really good.
With your coaching hat on, how have teams handled it? Do you think they've handled it in a way that maybe if you were a coach, you would have handled it? I see them dropping a couple of defenders back and just, you know, knocking it back and forth in front of the goalkeeper in order to build their offense up as they go forward. Do you think teams have done a good job of adapting?
I'll single one team out, and it's the team that's from Kansas City. I think Leo and his players with Neto have really figured out when to use him. When do you need to go forward? When do you need to go back? There are no books about indoor soccer. I think the only book that was ever written was by Klaus de Boer. There's no videos really on teaching. There's really no symposiums here about it. So where does a coach learn how to coach indoor soccer? It's from his own coaches, him doing his own thought process. When I traveled the world with the national team of futsal, and I would take the Brazil coach out to dinner, the Russian coach out for lunch, and we started figuring out different concepts and methodology. And when we came back, we blended that together. And because Pat Healy was with me, he would take it back to Baltimore. And because, you know, Sean Bowers was with San Diego, he took it back there. The game started to develop, and I think you'll really start seeing not only the present coaches, but the future coaches. Because it's our responsibility, and we talked about expansion, that if a new team comes in, it's one of our responsibilities to find a coach for them. It's been a past where a new team came in indoor. They hired a guy who knew nothing about indoor, and then they were in trouble in the first couple years. So I really think the methodology of the game with what we did is really going to help the game moving forward.
All right. Is anybody out there in the audience? Do you guys have any questions for JP or Keith? Is that Pete? Go ahead, Pete.
Our thought, I mean, I remember, I read somewhere where we played 48 games. I remember playing 56, I think, one year with the Pittsburgh Spirit. We have to sell the owners on this, but I'm hoping, personally, I don't know how you feel, like that we could play 30 games minimum, maybe 34, 36 next year. You know, it depends on probably how many teams. Like we're at 12 teams now. If the 4 teams that sat out this year are back with us, we'd be at 16. There might be an expansion team that comes in, you know, for next year. And the key is these travel pods. You know, we don't want Florida to have to fly to Tacoma if we don't have to. So can we get another team, you know, closer to Florida or another team closer to Tacoma? I mean, those are things that we're all looking at, but my hope is that we can get up to at least 30 for next year, if not more.
Yeah, I think the whole thought process is more games drives more revenue and not more expenses. So if we can get each team successful, that if they have more games, they have the ability to create more revenue, and not with the outside of creating more expenses where you have losses. To have more games to extend the season, I think is something that we'd like to get to. But it wouldn't go from, let's say, 4 months to 8 months. It might go 4 months to 5 months, and then try to get that solidified, and then go from there.
Yeah, and we wouldn't go from 24 games to 44 games or something like that, you know, so drastically. And maybe part of that is what we were talking about before. You know, if you're the primary tenant in your own building, you control all the dates, right? So you can get all the weekend dates, and we're really more of a weekend league at this point, more than anything else. And so the better relationships we have in our building, the more likely we can get some of these primary dates, and that would help us with scheduling.
Anybody else? JP, I'll start with you here as we wrap it up here for today. What do you want people here in this room to take with them out of here, and maybe your message to fans going forward here? What do you want people to take with them out of this discussion?
Wow, that's a difficult one, only because I think, you know, we know some of the faces in here, and a lot of the faces are from indoors, so I don't have to sell them about the game. So I would say what they could take out of this is to, you know, help spread the word of what we're trying to do. You know, we want to be, sports is different today. It's not just sports, it's entertainment, but we don't sell ourselves as entertainment first. We're a professional sports league first. If it's a percentage, maybe it's 80-20. But we want to be considered a sport. That's what we are. That's what we're selling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know we play music at games, and sometimes we try to attract, you know, a younger crowd, and we have these promotions and all that. But we're really trying to sell the sport. And I think that, you know, as we get more sponsors in, as we get to a television deal at some point, as we get more eyeballs on us, I think people will see what a great game it is and what we're selling. So I think we've only been in this position for what, since June? Feels longer,
Yeah.
no? Does it feel longer?
Only 6 months?
Yeah.
It seems like 6
Yeah.
years.
There's a lot to do, you know, and I would be honest, and Keith said this before, probably the first month to 2 months, we were learning about the league too. You know, we're learning, we're dealing with a good ownership group. It's 12 owners, right? But everybody's different, right? And they don't know us, and we don't know them. We don't know all the coaches, all the GMs. We don't know these people. So part of that was the learning curve, getting caught up, and then realizing what needed to be changed short term, we'll try to do. We had a lot of great ideas, but we all thought, you know what? Not for this year. I'm glad we were able to do the college draft for next year. That's one of the things that we really wanted to do. This we wanted to do as well. So, you know, we're taking those steps now, short steps now, but we see the long term.
Keith?
Obviously, I could be up for hours talking about where we think and like to go to. I think if you leave this room and you tell other people about the great game of indoor, as JP said, when we get continued ownership groups into it, people will go. I mean, James Kavanaugh, unfortunately, I traded him to St. Louis. He became a billionaire, and he just bought a team in MLS, which was not a smart move for me. But I think when we start getting ownership groups to join the ones we already have, I think that will help up here because it all starts at the top. I think when you get young kids, and everything's about Snapchat and Twitch and this and that, when young kids go to indoor soccer, it captivates them. I think if they go to a game and they look at it as a learning experience and a teaching experience, I think we're going to capture them then. We talked about fans. Early on, I think 75% of the fans were women. And because, you know, women were playing soccer. They don't play American football back then. I think from the ownership group to the players to the coaches to the fans to the sponsorship, if we just keep telling each other what a great game this is. And by the way, if you want to be in professional sports, you don't have to spend $450 million to get involved. You can come in here a little bit less to come into the league. But here's the thing. You said this at the beginning. We can say that we are the best professional indoor soccer league in the world because really it's not being played around the world. with boards and everything. And we'll continue to grow from there.
Well, I had one front office executive tell me that they are the most excited that they have been in all of the years that they've been working in indoor soccer, and it's because of the three of you, Commissioner Keith Tozer, President of Communications and Media, J.P. Delacamera, and Chairman of the Board, Shep Messing. Guys, thank you so much for this. We hope to do more of this to expose the game to more people out there, and we certainly thank you for your time and wish the three of you all the best of luck.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you,
We'll
Nick.
see everybody
Thank
at the
you.
game Saturday.
Yeah, and I'd like to remind everybody that if you can't make it to the game, all of our games are broadcast on YouTube. All you have to do is search MASL TV, and you'll see a menu of games that are up there. Our game at T-Mobile Center will be on MASL TV. Myself and my broadcast partner Eric Bergerud will put on another great show for MASL fans, and hope you can come out and see a game because it is really fun, and hope you'll watch us. So. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and it's been an honor to be a part of here on this stage with you guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.